they have reached their final stage. This is literally of this era that they're in right now. This is their final stage in saying race, racism, race is the problem, race, black people, race, systematic racism. That's why you're not successful. Elect us, we will help you. So this is kind of the final stage of this. And if it wasn't, then there wouldn't be so many voices like mine, like our friend Candace Owens, like so many other Black voices. Ayanna Pressley, though our voices are still Black voices. And there's so many of those voices that are saying, wait a minute, this stuff isn't necessarily true.
Let's talk about race, because nobody else is talking about race. Let's talk about
nobody
race
else
a
is
little
talking
bit.
about it.
There's a lot of weird stuff going on about race. Suddenly, America is the most evil, racist nation in the history of the world. You've got people, the whole, I would say, Democratic machine is running on the idea that Trump has just proliferated racism, but also the system was deeply racist before him, which is quite a condemnation of Biden and Schumer and Pelosi and everybody else that's been around forever. What do you feel is the temperature right now, just in a broad sense?
I mean, I feel like, honestly, the temperature when there are two different worlds here, right? There's our social media world. In the social media world, on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and everywhere else, is constantly at each other's throats. There's all this division. There's all this because the powers that be, particularly on the left right now, they want that division. They think that ginning up that stuff is going to push them back into power. But there's also the real world as well. And I think, and maybe this is just my unabashed optimism for America, but I think that there's a conversation that is happening in the real world that is nowhere near as elevated and heightened as the conversation of social media. But look, I think that what you have going on right now is the Democrats and the left, they have reached their final stage. This is literally of this era that they're in right now. This is their final stage in saying race, racism, race is the problem, race, black people, race, systematic racism. That's why you're not successful. Elect us, we will help you. So this is kind of the final stage of this. And if it wasn't, then there wouldn't be so many voices like mine, like our friend Candace Owens, like so many other Black voices. Ayanna Pressley, though our voices are still Black voices. And there's so many of those voices that are saying, wait a minute, this stuff isn't necessarily true. And that gives me hope that there can be a more elevated conversation. But let me tell you, I hope, and I truly do pray that they lose in November. Not because I am praying so much for the Republicans and the president is going to save our republic, although there's a big part of that. But they have to realize that this is not the way for power. This is not the way for votes. And I think that they have to get shellacked a couple of times to really figure it out. And there's going to be a lot of collateral damage in the form of the minds of some of the young African Americans that they are literally destroying by selling this message that racism is the number one problem in their life in order to get vote for Democrats. It's destructive, it's insidious, and I think that people are starting to wake up to it.
I like the way you describe that, because it does feel like we're sort of getting, if this is a video game, we're getting to the big boss. We're getting to the final boss, where for 8 levels, they've just ramped up the racism, homophobia, blah, blah, blah. And now we're there. Like, this election is it. And it almost seems to me that all they've got to run on is that America is racist. And if they don't have that, it's like, I don't think anyone buys any of the policies. And unfortunately, just the way the media operates right now, this isn't going to be an election about policy. This is an election about basically racism and socialism versus capitalism and freedom, something like that.
Yeah, it is. And Dave, the thing that always strikes me, because I watch some of the left-leaning stuff, and God, I see this, never-ending clown car of the Black liberals that come up and they talk about stuff. So case in point, so the McCloskey situation where this couple was defending themselves from an angry mob who had, by the way, broken into private property. And on the left, with the Black pundits, this somehow becomes about race. And this somehow becomes the idea of these people inflicting their white supremacy on these Black protesters. Number one, those protesters were not peaceful. Number two, they were not all Black. And number three, the
Yeah.
last time I checked, the Second Amendment and the right to bear arms is for everybody. It's not just for white people. So I'm struck when I see these conversations how quickly and how easily they remove all agency from Black people in America and from African Americans in general. All of our agency is removed in these conversations.
Yeah, well, it's also incredible because they try to paint the McCloskeys as evil for defending their property as we're watching all this stuff burn down. But it's not like the McCloskeys woke up that morning and were like, we're going to go shoot people. They had those guns for a long time. It sounds like they were actually Democratic donors, at least at one point, and supported Black Lives Matter. It's not like they were just sitting there waiting to start some stuff. It literally showed up at their door, and then they defended themselves. But that's actually a good transition to media, because you're a media, what can I call you, assassin, I suppose, as well. You've just had it with the mainstream media too, because this is the stuff they're endlessly peddling, right?
Well, it is, and a lot of people don't realize, Dave, that so I went to Columbia Journalism School. I got my master's degree from Columbia. I worked in media and production for years before I decided to come out and say what I really thought and do all this for myself. So I know all the games, dude. I know about crafting a tweet and leaving half of the code off. I know what fake news is, because sometimes fake news are actually, most of the time, fake news isn't an outright lie, but more a half truth. And so you see past all these games. When I first came out as conservative, one of the first friends that I lost got deeply offended when I told him, and not in a condescending way at all, told him that I've been working in this at that point for about 5 to 6 years, and I know these games, and you're not media literate enough to see this. And he got deeply offended by it, and then that was it. And it's just like, it's whatever. But people didn't realize these games, and I think the deeper we get into this, we see it over and over and over again. And folks like you and I, when there is an outright lie, and I mean a whopper, it has to be shut down so quick. Because if you don't, then it becomes part of the lexicon and it becomes common knowledge. Case in point, Trump's very fine people comment, which has been debunked so many times, but it is canon among the left. And that's because, and that was a failing on the right, because they didn't shut that down immediately when they should have. So.
You know what's interesting about that one is that for people that don't know, a minute, not even a minute, 30 seconds before Trump said very fine people on both sides, he absolutely condemned the neo-Nazis and the white supremacists. But what's really amazing about it is that Biden, when he launched his campaign, that's the video he used, the very fine people. And he's talking about America being racist and everything else. And he knows he can get away with it because nobody in the media is going to do anything about it. And then, us on Twitter, we'll hit back. But he knows CNN and MSNBC and everybody else is going to run cover for him.
Of course they knew it. And honestly, he knew it when he played the video. They look, at a certain point, and I think that media bashing is definitely, it's a fun pastime that a lot of us like to do on the right. But at a certain point, you can fool some of the people some of the time, but you cannot fool all of the people all the time. And what is going to happen on the left is people are going to start asking questions. They're going to start asking bad questions. They're going to start asking questions that they shouldn't have asked before. And then they will be excommunicated, just like you were, just as I was. And so I think, and you have been way at the forefront of this, because you saw all of this stuff coming for a long time before the rest of us. And so then the same thinking people are going to have to figure out, what do we create that is new, that is fact-based? And you can be, look, some of my best friends are liberals. You can be a liberal and not be an insane left, right? Just like you can be a conservative and not be super crazy far right. But at a certain point, the grown-ups are going to have to take control of the conversation here. And that's what I'm trying to do, and I know that's what you have been doing.
If you're looking for more honest and thoughtful conversations about politics instead of nonstop yelling, check out our politics playlist. And if you want to watch full interviews on a variety of topics, watch our full episode playlist all right over here. And to get notified of all future videos, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell.